Living alone in a city apartment had become my comfort zone. 3 years of complete independence. My own schedule, my own space. Then everything changed when I signed up for the International Student Housing Program at university. They matched me with Akira, a 22-year-old exchange student from a small mountain village in Japan. The day she arrived, I could see the wonder in her eyes. Everything amazed her: the automatic doors at the building entrance, the elevator buttons that lit up when pressed, even the multiple light switches in each room. She carried a small suitcase and a traditional wooden box that she handled very carefully. Her English was basic but sweet, and she bowed every time I showed her something new. Walking through my apartment felt like giving a tour to someone who had traveled through time. She gasped at the microwave, spent 5 minutes figuring out the garbage disposal, and asked detailed questions about the dishwasher. When I demonstrated the air conditioning, she clapped her hands together in delight. Her curiosity was infectious, and I found myself seeing my ordinary apartment through fresh eyes. That first evening, I was settling into my usual routine. After dinner, I always took a shower around 8 o'clock. It was my way of washing off the day and getting ready to relax. I gathered my towel and headed toward the bathroom, thinking about how I would need to coordinate bathroom time with a roommate now. As I reached the bathroom door, I noticed Akira standing there with her own towel and a small basket of toiletries. She had changed into a simple robe and was waiting patiently by the door. Her expression was expectant, like she was waiting for permission or instruction. "I shower now too?" she asked with that gentle smile I was already getting used to. Her voice carried the careful pronunciation of someone speaking a second language. The question caught me completely off guard. In my mind, I had assumed we would take turns, maybe work out a schedule. But looking at her hopeful face, I realized she might be asking if it was time for her to shower after me. Not wanting to seem rude or unwelcoming on her very first day, I nodded. What happened next still makes me shake my head in disbelief. Instead of waiting for me to finish, Akira began preparing to join me. She started removing her robe, clearly expecting this to be a shared activity. My brain went into complete panic mode. I stood there frozen, trying to process what was happening. Was this a cultural thing I didn't understand? Had I misread the situation entirely? The last thing I wanted was to offend her or make her feel unwelcome. She had traveled thousands of miles from home, was staying in a stranger's apartment, and was trying to navigate a completely foreign culture. In that moment of confusion, I made a decision that would complicate my life for weeks to come. Instead of explaining the misunderstanding, I went along with it. I told myself it was just for today. Then I would figure out how to clarify things tomorrow when we both had time to communicate better. Akira seemed completely comfortable with the arrangement. She chatted casually about the differences between her village and the city, mentioning how the water pressure was much stronger than what she was used to. She talked about the hot springs near her home where families would bathe together, and how she appreciated learning about American customs. That phrase stuck with me, American customs. She genuinely believed this was normal behavior for roommates. In the United States, she was trying so hard to fit in and do things the right way according to what she thought were our cultural norms. After we finished, she thanked me repeatedly for being so welcoming and patient with her questions. She said her parents had worried about her adjusting to American life, but that I was making everything so much easier. The gratitude in her voice made my stomach twist with guilt. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. What had I gotten myself into? How could I possibly explain tomorrow that this wasn't actually normal? The more I thought about it, the more complicated it seemed. She was so happy, so grateful, so convinced that she was successfully adapting to American culture. I kept telling myself I would fix it in the morning. I would find a gentle way to explain the misunderstanding. But when morning came, and she appeared at the bathroom door again with that same expectant smile, I found myself nodding once more. By the third day, I realized I had created a monster of my own making. What started as a moment of awkward politeness had become an established routine in Akira's mind. Every evening at 8 o'clock, she would appear with her towel and toiletries. ready for what she now called roommate shower time. The situation became more complicated when she started asking questions about other aspects of American culture. She would observe my habits and behaviors, taking mental notes like an anthropologist studying a foreign civilization. When I ate cereal for breakfast, she asked if this was typical American morning food. When I left shoes by the door, she wondered if this was a city custom in my village. We always remove shoes, but I see Americans sometimes keep them on indoors, she said one morning. But you take yours off like Japanese people. Is this because we are roommates? Every question felt like a test I was failing. I found myself second-guessing my own normal behaviors, wondering how they might be interpreted through her cultural lens. The shower situation had made me hyper-aware of how she might misunderstand other aspects of daily life. What made everything worse was how genuinely happy she seemed. Akira had been nervous about studying abroad, worried about fitting in and understanding social customs in her mind. I was the perfect cultural guide, helping her navigate American life with patience and understanding. She often mentioned how lucky she felt to have such a considerate roommate. My friend Hannah is staying with a host family, she told me one evening. They're nice, but they don't explain things like you do. You show me the real American way of living. The guilt was eating me alive, but the deeper I got into the deception, the harder it became to find a way out. How could I tell her that for over a week she had been participating in something that wasn't culturally normal? How could I explain that I had allowed her to believe something false about American customs? The situation reached a new level of complexity when she started mentioning our arrangement to other people. During a video call with her family, I overheard her describing her American experience. She spoke in Japanese, but I caught familiar words and phrases. When she hung up, she was smiling. My mother is surprised by American customs, she said. In Japan, usually only family members bathe together, but I told her Americans are more open with roommates. She thinks it's interesting cultural difference. My heart sank. Now her family back home had an incorrect understanding of American culture. Because of my inability to speak up, I imagine her mother telling neighbors about strange American customs. The misinformation spreading like ripples in a pond. Things got even more complicated when other international students started visiting our apartment. Akira had made friends in her English classes, and she loved hosting study sessions. During one of these gatherings, I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. American culture is so different, said Chen, a student from Taiwan. My roommate barely talks to me. We live like strangers. Really? Akira responded. My roommate teaches me proper American roommate behavior. We share everything, cooking, cleaning, even bathing time. It's very communal, like big family. The other students looked confused. Lynn, who had been in America for 2 years, raised an eyebrow. Bathing time. What do you mean? I quickly interrupted the conversation, offering to make tea for everyone. But I could see the wheels turning in their minds. Later, after everyone left, I noticed some of the students giving me strange looks. The stress was affecting every aspect of my life. I started taking longer routes to class to avoid running into people who might ask awkward questions. I declined invitations to social events, worried that someone might bring up roommate customs. My grades began suffering because I couldn't concentrate on anything except this growing web of misunderstanding. At night, I would rehearse conversations in my head, trying to figure out the right way to tell Akira the truth. But every imaginary scenario ended with her feeling embarrassed, betrayed, or culturally confused. She trusted me completely, and I was violating that trust every single day. The worst part was watching her confidence grow. She had arrived shy and uncertain, but now she walked with more assurance. She participated actively in class discussions, made friends easily, and seemed genuinely happy with her American experience. Her success felt built on a foundation of lies that I had created. One evening, while we were having dinner, she mentioned that she had been invited to join a cultural exchange presentation. At the university, students were supposed to share interesting differences between their home countries and American culture. I want to talk about roommate customs, she said excitedly. The shower sharing tradition is so interesting. I think other international students would learn a lot from this. I nearly choked on my food. The image of Akira standing in front of a room full of students and professors, explaining American shower sharing traditions was too horrible to contemplate. But how could I stop her without revealing the truth? The cultural presentation was scheduled for the following Friday, giving me exactly 1 week to figure out how to prevent a disaster. Every day that passed made the situation more surreal. Akira spent her free time preparing notes about the differences between Japanese and American roommate customs, completely unaware that her primary example was based on a complete misunderstanding. My friend Kevin dropped by unexpectedly on Tuesday evening. I hadn't seen him in weeks because I'd been avoiding social situations. When he knocked on the door, Akira was in the kitchen preparing dinner, and I was grading papers at the dining table. "Hey, stranger," Kevin said as I let him in. "Haven't seen you around campus lately. Everything okay?" Before I could answer, Akira appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She bowed politely and introduced herself in careful English. Kevin was immediately charmed by her friendliness and asked about her experience studying in America. "It's very good," she said, her face lighting up. "My roommate teaches me many American customs. Very helpful for understanding culture." Kevin glanced at me with an amused smile. "Oh, really? What kind of customs?" My heart started racing. I tried to catch Akira's attention, but she was focused entirely on Kevin, eager to practice her English with a new person. "Many things," she said. "How to share kitchen space, how to be polite roommate, how to take turns with bathroom for shower time." I felt a wave of relief. She had phrased it in a way that sounded normal. Kevin nodded approvingly. "That's considerate of you both. A lot of roommates struggle with bathroom schedules." But then Akira continued, "Yes, in Japan we have big bath for family sharing, but in America, roommates share shower together too. Different style, but same idea of community." The color drained from Kevin's face. He looked at me with wide eyes, then back at Akira, then at me again. I could see him trying to process what he had just heard. Kevin stammered. "That's interesting. Very cultural." I jumped in quickly. "Akira, didn't you want to check on the rice?" She nodded and returned to the kitchen, leaving Kevin and me alone. He stared at me in complete bewilderment. "Dude," he whispered, "what the hell is going on here?" I pulled him aside and quickly explained the situation, how the misunderstanding started, how I had failed to correct it, and how it had spiraled completely out of control. Kevin listened with his mouth hanging open. "You've been doing this for 3 weeks, he hissed. "Are you insane?" I didn't know how to tell her without making her feel stupid. I whispered back. "She's so happy and confident now. She thinks she's successfully adapting to American culture." Kevin shook his head in disbelief. "This is the craziest situation I've ever heard. You have to tell her the truth." "I know. But how?" "She's giving a presentation about American customs on Friday. She wants to talk about roommate shower sharing as an example of cultural differences." Kevin's eyes went even wider. "You have to stop that presentation." After Kevin left, I spent the entire night pacing around my room. The presentation was in 3 days, and I was running out of time. I had to find a way to tell Akira the truth without destroying her confidence or making her feel foolish. The next morning, I decided to try an indirect approach. During breakfast, I brought up the topic of cultural misunderstandings. I said casually, sometimes when people move to new countries, they misunderstand certain customs. It happens to everyone. Akira nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, I think this is normal. Culture is a very complex thing." "Right," I continued. "And sometimes, people who are trying to be helpful might accidentally give wrong information, even when they mean well." She looked confused. "What do you mean?" I was about to explain further when her phone rang. It was her advisor calling about the presentation. She spent 10 minutes discussing the details, getting more excited about sharing her cultural observations. After she hung up, she turned to me with bright eyes. "Professor Johnson says many students are interested in my presentation topic. She thinks the roommate customs section will be very educational. I felt sick to my stomach. Not only was she going to embarrass herself in front of students, but now a professor was involved. This was turning into an academic disaster. That afternoon, I tried a different approach. I suggested we watch some American movies together, hoping she might notice that roommates in films didn't share bathrooms the way she thought was normal. We watched 3 different movies featuring roommates, but somehow none of them included relevant bathroom scenes. By Thursday evening, I was desperate. The presentation was the next day, and I had run out of subtle approaches. I knew I had to tell her the truth directly, but I kept chickening out every time I started to speak. That night, Akira practiced her presentation in the living room. She had prepared note cards and was rehearsing her English pronunciation. When she got to the section about shower sharing, she spoke with such confidence and enthusiasm that I wanted to disappear into the floor. American roommate customs show interesting balance between privacy and community. She practiced saying, unlike Japan where families share big bath, Americans share shower space with roommate but maintain individual privacy in other ways. She had even developed a theoretical framework for understanding the cultural significance of the misunderstanding I had created. Her analysis was thoughtful and well-reasoned, which somehow made the whole situation even worse. After she finished practicing, she thanked me again for being such a good cultural teacher. She said she felt proud to share authentic American experiences with other international students. I went to bed that night knowing that tomorrow would bring either the most embarrassing moment of Akira's academic career, or I would finally have to find the courage to tell her the truth. Friday morning arrived with all the weight of an approaching disaster. I woke up with knots in my stomach, knowing that in just a few hours, Akira would either humiliate herself in front of dozens of students and faculty, or I would have to confess. 2 weeks of deception. Akira was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with her presentation notes spread out in front of her. She had dressed in her best outfit, a navy blue dress, that she said was appropriate for academic presentations. In Japanese culture, her hair was neatly arranged, and she wore small pearl earrings that her grandmother had given her for good luck. Good morning, she said cheerfully. I am very excited for today. This presentation will help many students understand cultural differences better. The sight of her genuine enthusiasm made my chest tight with guilt. She had worked so hard on this presentation, spent hours researching cultural theory and practicing her English pronunciation. All of it was built on a lie that I had created and maintained. Akira, I started, my voice shaking slightly, about your presentation. But before I could continue, her phone buzzed with a text message. She read it and smiled. Professor Johnson says she has invited students from anthropology department to attend. They are very interested in cross-cultural analysis. She looked up at me with sparkling eyes. This presentation might help my application for graduate program next year. My heart sank even further. Not only was this about avoiding embarrassment anymore, her academic future could be affected by this disaster I had created. Graduate programs in anthropology would not look kindly on a student who presented completely false information about cultural customs. I tried 3 more times during breakfast to bring up the topic, but each attempt was interrupted by phone calls, text messages, or Akira's excited chatter about the presentation. It seemed like the universe was conspiring to prevent me from telling the truth. By noon, I was a nervous wreck. The presentation was scheduled for 2 o'clock, and I still hadn't found the courage to speak up. I kept thinking about different scenarios. Maybe she would skip the shower customs section. Maybe the audience would just think it was an interesting cultural observation. Maybe no one would question it. But deep down, I knew exactly what would happen. Someone in the audience would speak up, probably another American student, and ask for clarification. The whole thing would unravel in the most public and embarrassing way possible. At 1:30, Akira gathered her materials and prepared to leave for campus. She wore a small backpack with her laptop and presentation materials, and carried herself with the confidence of someone who believed she had valuable knowledge to share. Thank you again for teaching me so much about American culture. she said, as she put on her shoes. Without your help, I would not have these interesting observations to share. I watched her walk toward the door, knowing this was my last chance. In 30 minutes, she would be standing in front of a room full of people, confidently explaining American customs that didn't exist. The thought of her confusion and embarrassment when someone corrected her was unbearable. Akira, wait, I called out, my voice louder than I intended. She turned around, surprised by my tone. Yes? Is something wrong? I looked at her expectant face, at the presentation materials in her hands, at the careful way she had prepared for this important moment. The words I had been rehearsing for days suddenly felt impossible to say. I just wanted to wish you good luck, I said weakly. She smiled brightly. Thank you. I will make you proud. After she left, I sat alone in the apartment, staring at the clock. Every minute that passed brought her closer to the moment of truth. I imagined her arriving at the classroom, setting up her presentation, greeting the professors and students who had come to hear her speak. At exactly 2 o'clock, I knew she was beginning her presentation. I pictured her standing at the front of the room, speaking carefully in her accented English, sharing her observations about the differences between Japanese and American culture. The first sections would go well. Her insights about food customs, social interactions, and academic environments were all accurate and thoughtful. But then she would reach the section about roommate customs, and everything would fall apart. I couldn't sit still anymore. I paced around the apartment, checking the clock every few minutes. The presentation was supposed to last 20 minutes, followed by questions and discussion. By 2:30, it would all be over. At 2:45, I heard footsteps in the hallway. My heart started pounding as I waited to see what version of Akira would walk through the door. Would she be confused and embarrassed, angry at me for misleading her, devastated by the public humiliation? The key turned in the lock, and she stepped inside. Her face was flushed, and she looked emotionally drained, but I couldn't read her expression clearly. How did it go? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She set down her backpack and looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't anger or embarrassment, but something more complex, disappointment mixed with understanding. We need to talk, she said quietly. Akira sat down on the couch across from me, her hands folded in her lap. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I could see her choosing her words carefully, the same way she did when she wanted to express something important in English. The presentation did not go as expected, she said finally. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the hurt underneath. What happened? I asked, though I was pretty sure I already knew. When I talked about roommate customs, there were many confused faces in the audience. Professor Johnson asked me to explain more clearly what I meant by shared shower time. Akira's cheeks reddened slightly. I explained just like I practiced. But then an American student raised her hand. My stomach dropped. What did she say? She said this is not normal American custom. She looked very surprised, maybe even shocked. Then other students started talking to each other, and Professor Johnson asked me where I learned this information. Akira looked directly at me. I told them my roommate taught me. The weight of what had happened settled over me like a heavy blanket. Not only had Akira been embarrassed in front of her peers and professors, but I had been implicated as the source of the misinformation. Professor Johnson asked to speak with me after presentation. Akira continued. She was very kind, but also concerned. She explained that what I described is not typical American behavior between roommates. I felt like I might be sick. I'm so sorry, Akira. I should have. She held up her hand to stop me. Please let me finish. I nodded, barely able to look at her. Professor Johnson asked if maybe there was cultural misunderstanding from the beginning. She said sometimes when people try to be polite, they accidentally create bigger confusion. Akira's voice was steady, but I could see tears forming in her eyes. I started thinking about our first day, when I asked about shower time. The tears I had been holding back for weeks finally started falling. I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. That first day, I thought you were asking if you could shower after me, and when I nodded, you seemed to think I was too embarrassed to correct the misunderstanding, and then it just kept getting worse. Akira was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. I was thinking about this during walk home. In my village, when we have misunderstanding, we believe both people share responsibility. You were trying to be polite and not make me feel stupid. I was assuming without asking clear questions. Her kindness in that moment made me feel even worse about the deception. But I should have told you the truth right away. Instead, I let you believe something false. 4 weeks. I let you tell your family, prepare a presentation, build your understanding of American culture on something completely wrong. Yes, she said simply. That part was not good choice. We sat in silence again. I could hear the traffic outside, the normal sounds of a Friday afternoon that felt completely at odds with the weight of our conversation. What happened after Professor Johnson explained? I asked. She was very understanding. She said cultural adjustment is difficult, and sometimes these confusions happen. But she also said that for future presentations, I should verify information with multiple sources. Akira wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Other students were nice too. The girl who asked question apologized for embarrassing me. She said she was just confused, not trying to make me feel bad. What about your graduate program application? Will this affect it? Akira shook her head. Professor Johnson said this kind of mistake shows I am learning and adjusting, which is normal for international students. She said my analysis of other cultural differences was very good, and my English presentation skills are improving well. I felt a small sense of relief, but the guilt was still overwhelming. I don't know how to apologize for this. I started with good intentions, but I handled everything completely wrong. I understand why you did not correct me at first, Akira said. In Japanese culture, we also try very hard not to make others feel embarrassed. But after first day, it became more difficult to tell truth. Yes, I nodded. Every day it got harder. You seemed so happy and confident. You kept thanking me for teaching you about American culture. I didn't know how to tell you that I had been misleading you. I was happy, she admitted. I felt like I was understanding American life well. But this happiness was built on wrong information. That is not real confidence. She was right, and her insight made me realize something important. My desire to protect her feelings had actually prevented her from developing genuine understanding and confidence. What happens now? I asked out. Akira was quiet for a moment. I need some time to think about this. Not just the shower situation, but what it means about trust between roommates. She looked at me seriously. I trusted you completely to teach me about American culture. Now I need to learn how to verify things myself and ask better questions. I understand if you want to find a different housing arrangement, I said. I wouldn't blame you for not wanting to live with someone who lied to you for weeks. I do not think you are a bad person, she said. But I do think we both learned an important lesson about communication. Maybe we can try again, but this time with more honest talking. Over the next hour, we had the most genuine conversation we'd ever had. Akira told me about her fears of making cultural mistakes and how much pressure she felt to adapt quickly. I explained how my desire to be a good host had led me to make increasingly poor decisions. We established new ground rules for our living arrangement. If either of us was unsure about something cultural, we would ask direct questions and seek multiple sources of information. We would be honest about misunderstandings, even if it felt awkward. Most importantly, we would remember that real kindness sometimes means having difficult conversations. The shower situation became a story we would both tell for years afterward. Though Akira always insisted on telling her version first, she said, it helped her remember the importance of asking good questions and not assuming she understood everything about a new culture. Looking back, those weeks taught me more about cross-cultural communication than any class I had ever taken. The experience showed me that good intentions aren't enough. Real respect for others requires honest communication, even when it's uncomfortable. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for someone is to tell them the truth. even if it means admitting your own mistakes.